Okay, we are reading Robert Monroe's Far Journeys. We are on the epilogue, the end game, page number 250 of the book and 131 of the PDF.
A third form of learning occurs during our cyclic non-conscious state, sleep. At our waking conscious level, we remember very little of such activity, although it becomes deeply embedded in and becomes a part of the memory experience system upon which we base our life activity. Culturally, we have been trained to place the least importance upon those events we do not remember and rarely recognize the influence these have upon our activities experiences. When examined from an external point of observation, automatic use of this learning process becomes quite visible. The principal learning system devised by the various cultures in human history is the most widespread and accepted, yet the most unnatural.
So there are three systems of learning that they're talking about. One is your primary experience, right? The other thing, that is what is happening with you, just happening around you at not even an awareness level. The next is that what you do with awareness. The third learning form is when you are sleeping. So when we are sleeping, we discuss this, that all of us go to night school and a lot is learned in the night school, but we are really not aware of what we have learned. So we do not pay much attention to what we have learned in our night school. Okay, that's what was said in the last paragraph.
The principal learning system devised by the various cultures in human history is the most widespread and accepted, yet the most unnatural. For the greatest part, it ignores completely the in place and operating primary and secondary learning processes. Thus, it is very artificiality without natural means of focusing attention, requires a form of dedication and discipline generally unavailable to the average human conscious mind. Attention flickers, fluctuates, especially in low order, repetitive experience, denigrating much of the learning that might take place. Crude as it may be, such learning methods are held in high esteem in human existence, and virtually all of it revolves around the knowledge, understanding, and control and application of physical matter, including the energy system so generated therein.
So what is he talking about here is the regular system of education that has become the modern education system. In the modern education system, one set works for everyone. You're not controlling or applying the learning process according to the propensity and the ability of the student, which used to happen in our Gurukul system. Now you are in a classroom and everyone does the same lesson. It's besides the point whether you're getting it or you're not getting it. Some children are more, they have better hearing abilities. So they learn by hearing. Some of them learn by doing. Some of them learn by speaking. Some of them learn by seeing. Now this was very, very beautifully displayed. I don't know how many of you all were there that time, but we had done a talk on, I think it was called depographology, where basically, what was that?
Dermatographology.
Yeah, dermatographology, where you actually have to take the scans of your fingertips, and based on the circles or the arcs which are there in your fingertips, they have a method of actually deciphering what is the best method of your learning. So if you start learning or educating yourself using that particular sense, which you're more attuned to, then your learning automatically will get accelerated and it will become better, right? But now one size fits all. So naturally, there are various issues in the entire educational system. So we ignore that intuitive ability to learn. We ignore that insight. We ignore going into an altered state of consciousness and learning. We ignore the propensity as to which sense works better for which child.
Most vital, this dominant yet artificial and limited system of learning operates entirely through input from the five physical senses. Because of this foundation, it has the effect of eliminating any last vestiges of origin identity remaining in the individual. This is at once the heart of the problem and the major challenge to the negative energy form, naive energy form.
So naive energy means what's your latent energy, right? They are ignoring that. They are totally ignoring what is coming intuitively to you.
As the first timer lives his human life, he finds virtually nothing to guide his mentation in directions other than those directly related to time, space, physical matter. Unfortunately for the human, this includes those organizations who purvey belief systems based upon individuals both present and in past history whose knowledge of origin identity was operational during their human sojourn. In the retelling and conversion to verbal human communication, plus the erosion of many retranslations, only portions of the process remain. Sadly, such portions attempt to teach effects rather than causes. Only in very rare instances do these provide clear access to the source.
So now, what does this mean? Every culture, every religion, every kind of a process had someone who went into an altered state and downloaded a process which worked for him or her. Now, that person had that particular experience, right? And they came back and attempted to explain in normal human terms to the others who were with them. But always there's a slip between the cup and the lip. So the Chinese whisper process takes place. And what was the original intent of the originator has got totally maligned. Okay, it's been totally transformed by what we are actually learning and doing now, which is where the problem lies, because you do not have, or rather we do not have that ability to tap into that original concept. We are working with watered down processes, right? So it says very clearly, sadly, such portions attempt to teach effects rather than the cause. And only in very rare incidences do these provide clear access to the original source. Now, if you see in our Gurukul system, the guru was a seer. The person had gone into altered states, and he was very tuned to each and every one of his students. So he knew what is the progression, what is the level of intelligence, what is the ability of each student, and everyone was given a curriculum according to their propensity and capacities. Now over here, we have stopped doing that. Wherein the main problem lies. So it's like putting square pegs in round holes, or making a competition where a fish has to climb a tree, or with a monkey. Now, naturally, there's going to be a very big distinction in how the fish is going to climb a tree. It's not possible. So therein lies the issue. And it says very clearly, as for the first timer in his life, he has virtually nothing to guide him, because he's forgotten that he's come from a expanded state of consciousness. We have actually forgotten that. Now, till we can connect and go into that expanded state and start getting downloads, or as in Far Journeys, we talked about the rote, right? Resonant, organized thought, energy. Until we can start getting our rotes for ourselves, we have no way to really understand what is and what is not. And that is where we are like blind men leading blind men, or women for that matter.
Therefore, As the first timer moves through human physical life, he picks up and absorbs many unsuspected attachments. The most powerful of these are emotional, or rather distortions thereof, which relate solely to expression only in time space reality. These reach such magnitude as to be virtually impossible to achieve and experience in a single physical human lifetime. The results are a compulsive need to re enter and recycle to complete that which had been begun, to perform the purpose for which there had not been time, to repay imagined debts. The list becomes endless.
Right. So now, now what is happening? This is what is said in the Gita also. If you are attached to something, if you have a desire for something, that is what is going to bring you back again and again into this particular state of consciousness, which we call the 3D reality, right? Now, the idea here is to really understand, transcend our attachments, transcend our desires, so that we achieve escape velocity, which was discussed the other day, that we leave the attachments, we leave our desires, we satiate everything, and we eject from this system and go back into that expanded state of consciousness. Now, if we get stuck with attachment and desires, then the cycle of birth and rebirth starts to come, and then the karmic cycle starts to come into play, and we have to keep coming back and finishing our karmic debt. So, if you look at it from the Gita perspective, it's the vasanas. You have to get rid of your vasanas. Whichever vasana has matured, they call it the prarabdha vasana, that is something that you are going to experience in this current life. And they call it the sanchit vasana, which is the bank balance of vasanas, which you need to complete, right? So the person who has totally eradicated their sanchit vasana, there is nothing left in that baggage, in the bank balance. They are here for the last lifetime. They're going to experience the prarabdha and get out. But in that experience, if you start getting attached, we have that story of that Rishi Muni who had actually completed everything, and then he was taking a bath in the river, and a small dough came into his hand, and he got attached to the dough, and his cycle started. कौन?
जड़ भरत.
जड़ भरत जो भी है, तो जड़ भरत जी का he got attached, and then he got stuck in the cycle once again, right? So this is where again awareness comes into the picture. We need to be constantly aware as to what is happening with us if we want to achieve escape velocity. So that awareness is extremely important in the entire game or the gambit.
In short, the problem can be stated very succinctly, which turns a first timer into a repeater. Human physical life is addictive.
So now, of course, if you get attached to your attachments, you are addicted, right? So what happens to a drug addict? They'll taste it a little bit first. Then they'll say, it's nice. Let's try it again. I'm not going to get addicted. And then as they do it, then they'll start having to increase the dose to get the same result. And what happens then? Now you are addicted. Now you can't get out. If you don't get that drug, you're going to go crazy and you're going to go mad, right? So now the drug has you in its grip. Like that, the earth life reality can also become a drug, and you can get addicted and caught up in the whole thing. That's why becoming aware and leaving your desires, leaving your attachments. I'm not saying leave your attachment. Don't do your dharma and karma. Do whatever you do. You be attached, but with detachment. So do exactly what you need to do, whatever you have to do. Be very, very diligent about it. Do your best. Be impeccable with your word, right? Perform your task, but don't become attached to the task. That is where we need to be very aware.
There are two overwhelming factors that engender such addiction or decay of orbit, as you prefer. Put the two together and interweave them tightly, and it becomes easy to perceive just how difficult the human compressed learning system can be. especially for the unaware and uninformed. This may in itself be part of the training. Any attempts to describe the methods are near incomprehensible to those who have never been human, just as it is extremely difficult to explain postgraduate status to a human first timer. The two factors involved are survival drive distortion and prime energy diffusion.
Okay. So if someone doesn't know the taste of salt, how are you going to explain the taste of salt to that person? This is also something that most excursion participants have a problem with. I'm sure that anyone who has done the excursion workshop, if someone asks them, they will tell the person, please do the program. But if the other person they are telling to ask them that what happened, what do you get, what do you experience, it becomes very difficult to explain it, simply because this is something that you need to experience. So the same thing over here, he says that when a person has gone through the human life system and graduated, it is very difficult for a person who is stuck in the human life system process to really understand what happens when a person graduates, right? So we can attempt to explain it, but it's very difficult to really explain it, because if you've not experienced it, then you really don't know what it is. Okay, we discussed this when we were reading Autobiography of a Yogi, chapter 43, right? Over there, I've repeated this over and over again, but I'm still repeating it again. Yukteswar ji, who was the guru of Yoganand ji, actually manifests, he had actually transcended. He manifests in front of Yoganand ji and is explaining to him what he is experiencing in that expanded state of consciousness. And let me tell you, if you see my notes of Lifeline and Exploration 27, the programs that I had just done in the institute and come back, and then we started reading chapter 43, you'll find there's so much of similarity between what he's saying and what I'd experienced and come. It's mind-blowing, let me tell you. So the point comes here that we must have gratitude to Robert Monroe and the Monroe process and everyone at the institute also who's keeping this stuff alive, that they've given us such simple and powerful tools to be able to experience what our seers used to experience. And it's so easy for us. We don't need that 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of dedicated practice. It's made so simple for us. The point is that we need to avail of that. We need to use the tools. The more we use it, the better it is. See, I posted that on the groups, on the virtual groups. I don't know how many of you are on the virtual groups, but most people are saying we are calmer. My problems are getting solved. I'm much better. My intuition has improved. We've gained a lot of information. We've gained a lot of knowledge. So everyone is saying the same, literally the same thing, right? There are key words in most of the posts over there. So that's exactly what we want. We want to be more equanimous within ourselves. We want to hold our center. And the process is so simple to be able to allow us to do that, so that we can access these expanded states very easily, right? So the point is that we have it in a platter, but it's up to us to take it. माने खाना पड़ा है, लेकिन खाना तो मेरे को पड़ेगा, और कोई नहीं खिला सकता मेरे को.
Survival drive distortion. Like animals, plants, and other organic life, physical man is heavily imprinted at birth with the will to continue to grow and live, to survive. This is expressed in two basic ways: body protection and maintenance.
Survival is a key imprint. I don't know how many of you have seen that TV serial RoboCop. In that, he had 3 prime directives, which he could not transcend, right? So one was survival. You have to survive. You will do anything if you are under attack. You have to survive. So that was one of the prime directives, and it is our prime directive also, that we need to survive.
The first demand is the acquisition and consumption of food and water. This is followed by pressure to keep the body suitably warm or cool. Next comes the need to keep it safe from predation, ranging from other humans and carnivorous animals through insects and down to the smallest virus. The fight or flee dilemma arises when two or more of such needs come into direct conflict as to priority.
So food, shelter, and threat, to avoid threat. These are the three main things that we are looking at when we need to survive. So as a hunter-gatherer, the hunter-gatherer was first looking for food, second for shelter, and was always hyper vigilant about any kind of threat. This is exactly the threat aspect is what we are going to discuss in the Resilience Advantage program. What are the mechanics of it? How does it work? And how can we start to become aware of it and then transcend it?
Nothing controversial in that. So, what's the problem? Most humans spend most of their waking hours taking care of these matters, one way or another. There's no choice in the matter. You're in the top 0.0001% of the human pyramid if you know without question these needs will be met tomorrow, the next week, the rest of your life, by your own action, your family, or your government.
So I think all of us who are sitting here are in this 0.001%. Most of us are there, right? The point here is that we are very, very lucky and we have to count our blessings.
There's also nothing new in the massive distortions that begins to occur beyond the basic needs. Storage of food or other assets just in case there may be a change in the future. Endless varieties of food aimed not so much at nutrition as at taste and aesthetics. Special food preparation and services, entertainment foods in the form of alcohol, drugs, tobacco, etc. And back around the cycle to foods that are good for you, to keep you healthy. Clothes that not only keep you warm but are made correctly, of a desirable color or texture, made for a variety of occasions, and of course, in rapidly changing style. Shelter that goes far beyond the hut in the hills, larger and or in a desirable location, equipped and re-equipped with newer furnishings, facilities, decorations, all catering to individual taste and current style primarily, far secondarily to comfort and overstated need.
So naturally, we have we've come a long way from the hunter gatherers, right? We've come a really long way. And if you really see in COVID, we've seen it. If you really look at yourself in COVID, how many clothes did you really wear? Let me tell you, I lived 1 year in literally 3 or 4 shirts, to be frank with you, 90% of the time. Because you're just repeating the shirt, you really don't need it. So the extras which we have are a luxury. It is not really required for survival.
Some of these have been brought to the point where it is actually difficult to die. Extensive and expensive life support systems in institutions are an example. Keep the body alive, never mind the details. In some civilized societies, it's a crime to take your own life. Whom will they prosecute if you're successful? All such extras and add ons are stimulated and rationalized by countless inducements, few of which can stand up under intense scrutiny for validity. This is compounded by competition, both to acquire and to dispense, which brings into full play the natural physical law of supply and demand.
So we all know if you go to the hospital, they are not going to let you off very easily. In spite of the fact that, you don't have the money, you don't have the will, you don't have the desire, but no, they are going to keep you in life support. They are going to give you the best possible drug, the most expensive drug. Why? because it's become a money-making racket, number one, right? I'm not saying that they don't do a good job. I'm filled with gratitude to the medical system in many cases, but yes, they go overboard in many, many cases. So whether it is actually required or not, whether we really need to put so much of life support systems in place, would it not be better if a person has come to the end of the life and is not going to enjoy a very good life or a very healthy life, that you be allowed to, okay, I desire to transcend. Why not? So these question marks are always there. In fact, in some countries now they've started to allow it, that if under certain circumstances, you can actually instruct to take the poison pill and then transcend.
To protect these accumulated items to serve the body, which is you. Locks on doors, fences around houses, doors and gates, laws and rules, medicines and drugs, guns, police officers in prowl cars, lawyers, doctors, nostrums and nauseum, cities and nations, banks, armies, and atom bombs. Within this distortion lies the adhesive that binds the heavy particles to the energy form, which all began with the early agrarian cultures and tribes. Intense overkill by the survival drive, all physical. Nothing else is important. It had to happen. Free will being what it is.
So,
Sexuality, reproduction.
so because of Shimangla, you have to start unmuting here. So because of the free will, the desire to accumulate, to create more protection around us, we have gone in from what is required to what is acquired, right? So we are all, most of us, we are in the acquisition spree. Now, what is enough is something which no one knows. Even Mukesh Ambani being one of the richest man, he still wants more. Now, what is he going to do with more? Everyone, I mean, God alone knows. But the fact is, what is enough? So today, when we wish something for people, the wish can be, may you have enough. So when you need it, you have it, rather than accumulating it. There was a story about Japan after the World War. World War was over, or even after the that nuclear disaster, and food supply, everything was in shortage in Japan. When people were queuing up, right, they only took what they were meant to take. They didn't take extra, right, so that everyone could benefit. Now the same thing, if you look at in most other cultures, they will start hoarding. I remember that I forget the name of Katrina, I think, was going to hit New York, and I was in New York that time. And of course, Shimangla was very upset that I was there, but I wanted to experience the hurricane. Ultimately, nothing happened. But let me tell you, with Shimangla's brother, we went to so many stores to get some essential items. All the stores had nothing in the stores. Because why? People had bought everything and hoarded it. Now, in the same principle, if what happened in Japan would have happened, then people would have taken exactly what they needed, and there would have been no hoarding. So there would have been no shortage, right? But this is that built-in system and not realizing what we are doing. That's what he's saying over here, that everything is an overkill for us.
The most powerful of the survival drive imprints take precedence over all others and therefore has been subject to more major distortions than any other. The greatest among these has been and is the illusion that, as a creative act, it thus engenders automatically the creative emotion of love, ethereal and godlike. The results are attachments and commitments that are both irrational and restrictive, which not only distort severely any current physical life goals but continue beyond. Illusory burdens of guilt, obligations, and a vast number of related memory patterns too potent to release. Further, the original motivating drive to reproduce has long since become secondary to the temporary sensory peak of the act itself. With few exceptions, it is doubtful if it has ever been otherwise with the male. Knowing this, the female with a propensity for perception has taken this manipulative advantage to broad extremes through hundreds of years of cultural evolution. Those females who succumb to the illusion of permanency have no choice but to lie back and take what is coming. Simply put, one fuck doesn't make a future. A baby maybe.
So now naturally sexuality has become a big thing. Now, the concept of sexuality basically was procreation, right? But now it has become recreation. And all of us know that ladies are using it to lure the male population because the male population gets attracted to that. It's very simple.
With increased objective knowledge of the influential power of the reproductive survival drive, the lures and blandishments thereto are used blatantly and consistently to distort even further the high sensory entertainment factor of the act itself, carefully omitting the slightest reference to its original purpose. Those using such enticements to irrationality range from the individual through major industries to governments themselves. The result is a cacophony of distortions, all aimed at increasing reproductive act desire and need. The amplification of the problem without providing a sensible solution, all of which only adds strongly to the glue that binds the human in low orbit.
So binds the human in the low orbit. So what were we talking about over here? That this is the earth and these are the rings, the lower rings, and then you go to the outer rings, right? So what is keeping us in this lower rings? Keeping us stuck over here where we are constantly coming back and going back. One of the things is sexuality, because you get attached, you get stuck. अपने बोलते ना 7 जन्म इसके साथ लेगा. So what are you actually professing? You're already professing that I'm going to come back here for 7 times. But what is our ultimate objective? To transcend, to develop escape velocity so that we can go to the outer rings and actually go back to our origin. But because of sexuality, we tend to get stuck in the cycle. So this attraction is something again that we need to be aware of and then ultimately transcend. You want to stop here today?